Picture this. You wake up before sunrise. It is freezing cold. You have 500 cattle to move across 1,000 miles of desert. And for breakfast, the exact same thing you had yesterday, and the day before that, and every single day for the past 4 months. No eggs, no bread, no fruit. Just one thing. And here's the part nobody talks about. The cowboys did not just eat this because they were poor. They ate it because it was the only food on earth that could actually keep a man alive in the Wild West. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand why the cowboys' diet was actually one of the most brutal and genius survival systems ever invented. Before we talk about the food, you need to understand one thing. Cowboys did not carry food with them on horseback. That would have been impossible. Instead, every cattle drive had one secret weapon, the chuck wagon. In 1866, a cattle rancher named Charles Goodnight took an old army wagon, rebuilt it completely, and created something that would change the Wild West forever. He called it the chuck wagon. Chuck was cowboy slang for food. This wagon was essentially a mobile kitchen. It had a giant wooden box on the back with compartments for flour, coffee, beans, bacon, sugar, and dried meat. It had a cast iron stove, it had a water barrel on the side, and it was driven by one man, the cook. Now here is something most people do not know. The cook was actually the second most important person on a cattle drive after the trail boss. Cowboys would get into fistfights over bad food. A good cook could demand double the salary of a regular cowboy. Some cooks carried guns specifically to protect their food supply. The chuck wagon traveled ahead of the herd every single day. By the time the cowboys arrived at camp, food had to be ready. If it was not ready, the cook had a serious problem on his hands. So what was actually in that chuck wagon? The number one food of every cowboy on every cattle drive across the entire Wild West was beans. Specifically, pinto beans. Cowboys ate beans for breakfast. They ate beans for lunch. They ate beans for dinner. And on bad days, they ate beans as a snack between meals. Now, before you feel sorry for them, understand why beans were so perfect for the Wild West. They were cheap. They were light to carry. They lasted for months without going bad. And they gave a man enough protein and energy to ride a horse for 14 hours straight in burning heat. Cowboys called their beans cowboy strawberries. They also called them other things that I cannot say in this video. But here is the fascinating part. The way cowboys cooked their beans was actually a science. The cook would soak the beans overnight in water. Then he would cook them all day in a cast iron Dutch oven buried in hot coals underground. This slow cooking method pulled out maximum nutrition and made them soft enough to eat even when a man had broken teeth, which most cowboys did by age 30. Now you are probably thinking, okay, Beans, but surely cowboys ate beef all the time. They were literally herding thousands of cattle. There was meat everywhere. Here's the shocking truth. Cowboys almost never ate fresh beef on the trail. The ranchers who owned the cattle had a famous saying, "Only a fool eats his own beef." Every single cow in that herd represented money at the end of the trail. Killing one for dinner was like a truck driver eating his own cargo. So instead, cowboys ate something far more disturbing, salt pork. Salt pork was pig belly that had been preserved in so much salt that it could survive for months in the desert heat with zero refrigeration. When you cooked salt pork, it did not taste like meat. Cowboys described it as tasting somewhere between leather and saddle grease. But it gets worse. When the trail went on too long, and even the salt pork started going bad, and it did go bad, it just went bad slower than everything else. The cook would slice off the green and gray parts, soak the rest in water to pull out some of the rot, and serve it anyway. Cowboys ate rotting meat regularly, and they considered it a normal Tuesday. If there was one thing that kept cowboys alive more than any food, it was coffee. Cowboys drank coffee all day long. Morning, midday, afternoon, evening, and even before bed. A cattle drive that ran out of coffee was considered a genuine emergency, more serious than running out of medicine. But the coffee cowboys drank was nothing like what you drink today. The cook would take Arbuckle coffee beans, the most famous coffee brand of the Wild West, sold in pre-roasted bags, crush them with a hammer, boil them in a pot of water directly, and pour the whole thing, grounds and all, into a tin cup. The coffee was black, bitter, thick with grounds, and so strong it could keep a man awake for 20 hours straight. Cowboys called it six-shooter coffee, meaning it was strong enough to float a six-shooter pistol on top. There was also a trick to getting the grounds to settle to the bottom of the pot. The cook would throw a raw egg, shell and all, directly into the boiling coffee. The egg whites would bind to the grounds and drag them to the bottom. This gave you a slightly cleaner cup of the most aggressively terrible coffee ever made. Cowboys drank this every single day of their lives and considered it the greatest luxury on the frontier. Now, after 4 months of beans, rotting salt pork, and six-shooter coffee, something happened on every cattle drive that cowboys talked about for the rest of their lives. The cook would make a pie. Once every few weeks, when the chuck wagon was near a town or trading post and the cook could get his hands on dried apples or peaches, he would make a dried fruit pie cooked in the Dutch oven. Cowboys have written diary entries, letters home, and memoirs specifically about these pies. Grown men who had survived gunfights, stampedes, and flash floods wrote about a simple fruit pie like it was the greatest moment of their lives. One cowboy named Charlie Siringo wrote in his memoir that on the day the cook made pie, every man on the drive rode just a little faster, complained just a little less, and went to sleep just a little happier. That is what 4 months of beans does to a man. So here is what we actually learned today. The cowboy diet was not romantic. It was not what you see in movies. It was brutal, repetitive, and sometimes genuinely rotten. But it worked. It kept men alive across thousands of miles of the most unforgiving land in America. It fueled the cattle drives that built the entire American beef industry. And it created a food culture so specific and so extreme that cowboys developed their own language, their own recipes, and their own emotional relationship with something as simple as a cup of coffee or a dried apple pie. Next week on WestCrypt, we are going to talk about what cowboys actually feared. Not outlaws, not the law, something else entirely. Something that made the toughest men in the Wild West lose sleep at night. You are not going to guess what it was.